Hello and welcome to HR Vision, our special set of programmes talking to HR directors about the key issues and themes affecting them. Today I'm joined by Darren Hockaday, and he's the HR Director of London Overground Rail Ops, and we're here to talk about the issue of social mobility and whether we think it's HR directors' roles to improve the sort of social mobility of their workforce. Welcome, Darren.
Thank you.
I guess it's a sort of interesting question, actually, because I think in the past, the role of an HR director was just to give people jobs and give them work, and that was probably as good enough as it had to be. But I think we're entering a sort of period now of sort of uneasiness in the skills market, where skills funding is falling, kids in the news are sort of hitting the workplace, and employers are saying they've not got the skills that they need. It's almost like the state has done its job, but sort of fallen short, and it's asking employers to sort of do the rest of it on their behalf. Is it your responsibility to sort of educate and finish the education of your workforce? What's in it for you, really?
Well, I think it could be our responsibility. I think it presents an opportunity maybe to perhaps pick up where education left off. I think if an employer is seen to develop individuals perhaps to an academic standard, then that can perhaps improve the way they think about their employer.
Yeah. I mean, has it changed for you? I mean, did you used to just take people on straight away and they're ready to go in jobs? Or is it a bit different where you are and training is sort of necessary anyway to start the job?
I think it has changed. From being based in London, I think there's huge diversity rather of employees in terms of where they're from, their first language. So I think that has a bearing on it. I think perhaps further back and more traditionally, I think it was perhaps more of a given and taken for granted that people would arrive with GCSEs, O-levels, CSEs, to a certain standard, whether it be school leaver, graduate.
So you're saying that literally employers just have to accept now that people coming to them are probably not as highly educated as before?
Maybe not necessarily as highly educated, but I think within London Overground there are less barriers to entry, perhaps than other businesses. So if you're working on the front line, you don't necessarily need any particular skills or qualifications.
Okay, so the requirement for you is really more aptitude rather than actual skills, and then once they're there, that you can train them up accordingly.
Yeah, I think we're looking for people who are keen to join the railway, keen to join a growing business, which we've been fortunate enough to be growing in the last couple of years. We've doubled in size in employee base. So I think if they're motivated to join us and willing to perhaps work at perhaps an entry level on the front line of the railway and work their way up, then I think that's a good start, and we can help them do a bit more.
Do you see it as sort of social engineering, or do you just see it as just giving people jobs and training them to do the jobs we need them to do?
Well, I haven't perhaps,
Yeah.
but I think it's an interesting question, because I think it is something else that the employer could do for society.
And you think that's a role you're happy to take and other employers are happy to take?
Well, I think if it can improve engagement and it motivates people that the employer is taking their education further, then I think that's a good thing, and I think it enhances our own career development.
So what type of training do you offer employees that join you then?
We offer a good 2-week induction for a lot of people who are going to work on the front line, which includes all the sort of fire, safety, first aid, customer service training.
Okay.
To give them a really good grounding in that, and some specific technical skills, whether it be booking office and working with the ticket machine, perhaps if they're working at a station.
But you MVQise them, if that's a word.
We have done some NVQ work, and I think that it means a hell of a lot more to them than I think I might have envisaged in the first place.
Right. Okay.
And I think by that I mean, they're really pleased to receive a qualification post school that they can put on their CV, and it gives them something that is recognisable outside the business and the sector.
So would you be doing that anyway, or is this a sort of an additional cost, this sort of training that you're giving?
It is an additional cost, although there is reducing amount of funding for it.
Yeah.
But I think for our train care, for example, an MVQ in customer services gives them something else. They come into contact with customers even though it's not part of their general job description, but they enjoy it.
Okay.
They're motivated by it. So if we can enhance that additional benefit they give our customers whilst motivating them and engaging them further, then I think it's it works for both employee and employee.
So you get a clear return on investment, you believe, on that?
I think we do.
Okay. And a lot of that, there's a sort of cliche of we only train people up and then they leave us. I mean, giving people recognised MVQ skills is something they can obviously take away as well as stay within the company. What's your experience of that happening?
I haven't seen that as an issue to date. I think for those where perhaps English isn't the first language, supporting people in English, for example, means that their potential in the qualifications and education they've had is probably better realised within our business for the future. For those who perhaps didn't do as well at school or didn't have the opportunities in numeracy, literacy and IT, then I think you give them far more in future to develop into other roles. And I think my preference would be, well, it's good to take people externally, that always freshen things up a bit, where you've got quite a good base at entry-level positions to try and move them through the organisation. Makes a lot of sense.
Yes. But, I mean, do you think, companies can't really be charities, can they, at one level? I mean, it's all very well helping get more diverse and social movement within society, but that's not your chief role, is it? So, I mean, what would you say to employers for whom, they don't have quite the same resources as you to do all this, like smaller companies, for instance? Well,
our resources are still very scarce, and they're tough decisions. And, I think we've prioritised that entry group, say train care, as receiving perhaps the bulk of, our training budget to focus on developing them for the future.
So your entry level, what sort of skill level set do entry people come to you at with?
In many cases we don't stipulate that they have to have a certain level of maths, and many originate from outside the UK, and those that do or are from the UK don't necessarily have a great set of qualifications, but they're cleaning trains. The hours sometimes are long, or in the mornings or late in the evenings. So we really want people to be excited about joining a growing business and the railway sector.
Yeah. Well, I think you definitely. You give the impression you recruit for potential, and I think sometimes government can be almost paralysed by sort of achieving certain level of skills per sort of social group, and do you think that there is that sort of paralysis by analysis type of thing, and we should just hire people a bit more common sense, I guess?
I think I see where you're coming from, and I mean, an example that reminds me of is the way we assess people, their ability to think on their feet, to problem solve, the way they interact with people, they use their initiative, perhaps rather than the more sort of traditional skills and qualifications. So I think the way we assess people helps us get the sort of right fit. And being in London, of course, we have a huge market pool to choose from, so that's also been very helpful.
Yes. Is there a slight contradiction though? Because I guess the railways probably wants to position itself as having more and more higher skilled people, not more and more entry skilled people. Is there a perception versus a reality thing that you have to sort of work against?
I think the reality is with fares most definitely going up, that the railway will need to compete perhaps on other things other than just the cost of a ticket. So, value for money would include customer service. So I think customer service, for example, has a very important role to play, where I think the railways, could be squeezed in terms of, the number of people using them as fares go up.
Do you personally just feel proud that you're able to bring someone out of poverty, for instance, and give them a job and get them on their first footing and give them that chance in life? Is that pride something that HR directors maybe have lost in recent years?
It gives me a great sense of achievement. I think one of our employees was not keen to do a maths test. Been a while since she'd been to school. She'd been with us some time, and there was an offer of promotion if she'd passed the maths test, but wasn't very confident. So with a bit of support and encouragement, she took the maths test and to her surprise passed it. and then was promoted into a ticket office post from the gate line. And I think, you know, talking to her since, you know, that's been a massive change in her life. So I think that, you know, the feedback is a good feeling that you can change people's lives by supporting their career development.
Yeah. Do you think people can be written off because they don't seem to demonstrate a set amount of skills? Or...
Quite possibly.
Yeah.
That's the danger.
So I guess the message really is for sort of HRDs to sort of recognise that they're not charities. I mean, they're there to turn a profit and they're there to run a business. But I think, you know, we should probably recognise this the people element of being an HR director is still very much in focus. Yeah. And
I think most HR directors, if not all, would agree with that. That's what gets us out of bed each morning, motivates us.
Great. Okay. Well, Darren, I think that's been great stuff. You know, we tried to raise some of the issues around social mobility. They're issues that we will carry on writing about in the magazine. So if you want to read more, do go to the magazine. Otherwise, thank you very much for joining us, and thank you for listening.